All right, everybody, Sooners Illustrated game preview time. Week 9, Game 8, number 13, Oklahoma. Number 8, Ole Miss, Saturday at the stadium. It's an early kick, 11 a.m. Central Time in Norman. It's on ABC, one of the big games of the weekend, a top 15 showdown between the Sooners and the Rebels. Guys, we're going to kind of say this every week. Huge game. Biggest game of the year, maybe the biggest game for Brent Venables at Oklahoma. It's up there because you win and you feel like the path to 9 wins and potentially the playoff is pretty clear. If you lose, it's not over. I mean, you have obviously huge opportunities, but it's tough. I mean, you're going to have to win on the road now. It's obviously much more murky kind of moving forward into the month of November if you can't find a way to win this game. So huge opportunity, top 10 team coming to your place, a lot on the line this weekend. This is a huge chance for Oklahoma to kind of win some favor back. It feels like after the Texas game, nationally, everyone's kind of a little bit of off of Oklahoma. They could swing a lot of those people back with a good performance and a win this weekend. It feels like this is a huge spot for Oklahoma at home.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it earlier in the week, but it just feels like if you protect home field, like you're going to feel really good about your chances, with the college football playoff when those rankings start coming out. But it starts with this game. I mean, this is the first of, 5 consecutive games against top 25 opponents, 3 of those at home. Obviously, the next 2 are on the road. So if you can get this one and just, kind of bank that win before you head into, maybe arguably your 2 toughest games of the season, they're in kind of back-to-back over a 3-week stretch between going to Tennessee and then going to at Alabama, who is probably playing better football than anybody in the SEC right now. So if you can get this win, you feel really, really good about where you are heading into November. And Brent Venables kind of talked, or what he was asked about earlier this week, but obviously, that stretch that they had in 2000, Red October. I mean, this is. If they can get this game, they could be in store for a Red November stretch to try to replicate what they were doing 25 years ago.
Well, yeah, when Oklahoma lost to Texas, we were like, there's more opportunities to get a big win, to pad that resume. Sure. This is the game, this is that game that you absolutely need to do that. Like, this is a top 10 team coming to Norman, which doesn't happen often. I think it's just the 5th time in quite a while.
10 years.
Yeah. So it's just like, this is the game you need, and it's a high-powered offense. You get to go with your high-powered defense. What happened?
You're there.
You're there. We lost you for a second. You froze for a second, but you're there.
Oh, you guys completely went off. Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, you get to have your high-powered offense. The high-powered offense is going to get your high-powered defense, and it's just a matchup of 2 different styles of how to play. Prove that you can win this one. I mean, you're at home. You're going to have the benefit of that. And it should be a fun matchup overall. I mean, just a big game for Oklahoma. Like we said, this is the opportunity that you need. This is the one you want to get.
Yeah. No, it's a huge spot. And it's huge for Ole Miss, too. I don't know if you guys have really perused their schedule. It's very light the rest of the way. So if they lose, they're looking good for 10-2, but they will have no wins of consequence. I mean, LSU would be the big one, obviously, but LSU's kind of fallen off a little bit. Other than that, I mean, their next best win after LSU, South Carolina, Florida. I mean, I don't know how their schedule is what it is. It's not like Oklahoma's. It's not a gauntlet the rest of the way. Their final 4 games are South Carolina, the Citadel, Florida, and Mississippi State. So they're going to probably win out. I mean, you never know. It's the SEC. They could stumble. Starkville's not a gimme. I think Mississippi State's proven that they're at least competent.
Yeah, and the Egg Bowl is always weird.
Yeah, it is the Egg Bowl. It's a great call. But this is one that they need. They need it. And they're coming off a loss, obviously, last week in Athens. So this is a huge resume spot for them, too. Obviously, we've kind of talked a little bit during the week, not on the show or anything, but about the Brent Venables and Lane Kiffin history, going back to, Brent Venables, Oklahoma the first time. Lane Kiffin was at USC. They had some Alabama-Clemson matchups. Obviously, the game last year out in Oxford, where the defense played pretty well against Jackson Dart and Ole Miss's offense to kind of keep OU in that game. But obviously, the offense was what it was, and Jackson Arnold got sacked 1 billion times, and they lost out there. So it's a fun matchup, a lot of familiarity, a lot on the line, and should be a really fun game on Saturday. The X factor is the weather. We've talked about the weather a little bit throughout the week, just kind of trying to figure out what it's going to look like on Saturday and how that could affect the game. Guys, I mean, obviously everyone's always talking about the weather and like, oh, what's it going to be like on Saturday? But it could seriously have an impact on the actual game on the field if it's a rainy day on Saturday, which is possible. What does that do to the game for you guys? Just kind of speculating a little bit weather-wise. If it's a deluge on Saturday and it's raining, that would help Oklahoma, no?
I would think so, just because it kind of neuters Ole Miss's passing attack, you would think. If it's raining hard, obviously harder to throw the ball, harder to, get those deeper passes off. Ole Miss, obviously one of the best in the country at explosive plays. So you would think you would favor Oklahoma's defense, especially with how stout the run defense has been. But then on the flip side, it's like Ole Miss's run defense has been a little shaky. And I know Oklahoma's rushing attack hasn't been the best, but if it comes down to which team can run it better, I'm interested to see how, Ole Miss's shaky run defense kind of stacks up compared to, Oklahoma's stout run defense. And I know it's going to be an interesting matchup there with like Kewan Lacey, who's like one of the best in the country at breaking tackles.
Yeah.
So I would still think that a weather impacted game would be more low scoring. And I think any low scoring game this season right now just favors Oklahoma with how good the defense is.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is pretty good. I mean, that's the guy you still got to watch out for, even in the conditions. But I think Oklahoma gets a little bit of advantage because of the +1 run game they have with John Mateer running the football. I think I've looked at some film, and it looks like sometimes Ole Miss can struggle with that, with the quarterback running in a particularly designed run attempt. That's been eating them up this year. And I think Oklahoma with John Mateer and how comfortable he is in that role, it could be beneficial. So that's the area I see it in, because obviously these are two teams that want to pass the ball. They want to throw the football down the field. And you get that type of conditions, it changes things. But so I see Oklahoma getting an advantage there, as you said.
We're keeping an eye on the weather. It seems like as we're getting closer that there's a chance that the worst of it is through before we actually get to game time. It's going to be a monsoon in Oklahoma on Friday. So curious if they're going to harp the field. Is it going to be a mucky field on Saturday? These are all kind of just little wrinkles going into this game on Saturday that you got to kind of keep an eye on. Weather could be a factor on Saturday. On the injury side, we thought they got through Saturday pretty clean, at least on an offensive line standpoint. The week goes on. Derek Simmons pops up on the availability report on Wednesday night with a questionable designation. Logan Howland is still questionable as well. If neither guy can go, you figure it's probably Luke Baklenko. That's who we saw down in Dallas. Not ideal. I thought he was okay in Dallas, but obviously they really didn't run the ball in that game at all. We talked about that a lot in the Monday after. So huge wrinkle there. Gentry Williams also questionable. Same for Keontez Lewis.
Keontez is doubtful.
He's doubtful. So, I mean, not a ton of injuries, but some potentially key ones, especially offensive line. If Simmons and Howland are both out, because Sexton and Taylor are both still out, you're very thin at tackle this weekend. Very thin.
Yeah. And I'm curious to see how that kind of shakes out throughout the week, because, it's important to know, like, Logan Howland's missed the last 2 games with that ankle sprain. He had to protect the boot on his foot. But last week he was doubtful all week. This week he starts out questionable. Sure. So like maybe there's some hope that you can get him back there, because if Derek Simmons does end up missing this game, if you can plug Logan Howland in there, I think you feel better than you would if you feel Luke Baklenko. Just because I think Logan Howland is a little bit further along in his development at this point than where Baklenko's at. But yeah, certainly, I mean, like, you would love to have Derek Simmons because he's, one of your better offensive linemen overall this season. He's just steady veteran presence. I know he didn't have his best game in that Kent State game, but I think for the season, he's been one of your better run blocking offensive linemen too. So if you can get him there in a game where you might need to rely on the run again, that would obviously be huge. But yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you're going to have the injuries, it's better to have them early in the week for the offensive line, because it's about building chemistry with the guys you're going to be out there with. So it does help if he has to go, that it's not just thrown in there in the middle of the first quarter of the game.
Fair.
That's going to make make it easier overall. So that's where I see it. I think Tom hit it on the nail, so I'm not going to go too much more into it, but that's where I see it overall.
It just offensive line, it's like 1 step forward, 2 steps back on health. It's like they just can't shake it. 2 years of this, but we'll see. Maybe they get some good news later in the week. we'll keep an eye on it. Certainly, obviously, availability reports posting every night. We'll have those over on Students Illustrated, the updates there. So keep an eye on the website, and we'll let you know how things are looking going into Saturday morning as Oklahoma gets ready to take on Ole Miss. Let's break down the game a little bit as far as on the field. Keys to the game for Saturday, Oklahoma hosting a top 10 team. James touched on it. Third time in 2 years in the SEC already. It only happened twice the previous 10 years or so before that. So kind of the nature of the beast. Brent Venables talked about that a little bit as press conference on Tuesday. Key to victory, James, I think you're getting it started on Saturday for Oklahoma against a top 10 Rebel squad on Saturday.
Yeah, in these big games, I guess when you can look at Michigan and Auburn, it was like Oklahoma's like defensive line and linebackers had to be on point because they were going to run the football so well. In this game, it's about the cornerbacks. Ole Miss does a lot of RPO stuff, as you've known with Lane Kiffin and things like that. But they do a lot of where they get their guys on the outside one-on-one and just throw the ball down the field. We've seen that hurt Oklahoma this year just because of the defensive pass interferences and things like that. They have to be completely responsible in what they do in their technique. They have to be ready for that. And it hurts that you don't have you don't know if you're going to have Gentry Williams out there as well in this particular moment. But those cornerbacks have to be ready. Jacoby Johnson, Cortland Guillory, they got to be ready to go. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. I think that's the key to the game here is how they're going to play and how they're going to handle that position being in a one-on-one situation for a majority of the football game.
Yeah, it's kind of perusing the stats a little bit, trying to learn more about, Ole Miss. Obviously, we're busy on Saturdays. I can't watch every snap of every team. Their receiving yardage very evenly kind of spread of like 5 guys. Like they really have a lot of dudes that can hurt you. So it's going to be a test for Oklahoma secondary for sure on Saturday. I agree with that. We touched on a little bit earlier. The run game going to be huge. Going to be huge. Got to run the football on Saturday. Yeah. Oklahoma. Did they find something in Columbia, or was that a one-off? We're going to find out this weekend. James, I think maybe mentioned earlier, Ole Miss's run defense stinks. One of the worst in the country. It's worse than South Carolina for sure, statistically at least, right? So you would think there's an opportunity here potentially, and this is whether or not, especially if it's raining though, to lean on Torrey Blaylock, to lean on Xavier Robinson. O-line, the in and out we just talked about could play a factor here, but if Oklahoma's running the ball like they did against South Carolina, you feel really good about where they're at. So I think the run game is going to be a major, major key this weekend. And really the rest of the season it will be. But against this defense, potentially, again, in some weather, without Keontez Lewis probably or possibly, most likely, the run game is going to be important on Saturday. So that's a major key for me for Oklahoma's the run game.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off James a little bit. He mentioned the pass defense, but specifically, limit the explosive plays. Ole Miss, leads the nation in passes of 30-plus yards. They got 23 of those already. They're tied for first in passes of 20-plus yards with 37 of them. Trinidad Chambliss has just done a really good job distributing the ball, like you said, very evenly through that receiving core. But, I mean, he's getting pressure on just 20.3% of his dropbacks this season. I think he's only getting sacked on 10% of those dropbacks. So Ole Miss has done a really good job of, keeping him upright, taking pressure off him, just kind of letting him execute back there in the pocket. So I think if Oklahoma can get some pressure to help kind of limit those explosive plays. And again, like James said, the cornerbacks and the safeties, they're going to be challenged in this one, probably more than they've been so at any point this season. I think really the biggest test so far has probably been Cam Coleman at Auburn. And, that was kind of a baptism by fire for Cortland Guillory in that game, an opportunity that he learned from. But, I don't think Ole Miss has any player that is a Cam Coleman level player, but they've got a lot of really talented receivers that they trust to make plays. So being able to limit those explosive passing plays and try to, make Trinidad Chambliss a little bit uncomfortable back there, I think will go a long way toward dictating this game.
The Trinidad Chambliss thing is a crazy story. If anyone tuned in is not real familiar with it, it was at Ferris State.
Connor Neer's school.
What's that?
Connor Neer's school.
Connor Neer, teammates with Connor Neer at one point in time. Obviously, a really good quarterback there, 2-time champion at Ferris State, which is a really good program at a lower level, obviously. And he comes to Ole Miss, and he's supposed to be the backup to Austin Simmons. Remember, we talked about Austin Simmons was one of the big talks of the offseason of, where does he rank in terms of one of the better quarterbacks in the conference? And he goes down early, and he just got Wally Pitt by this guy who has played really good football. And and now he's leading Ole Miss potentially on a playoff run here. We'll see what they do the rest of the way, but they're in position for that right now, obviously in the top 10. So it's a crazy story, and it'll be a fun matchup this weekend with him going against Oklahoma's defense. I don't think he's seen anything quite like what he's going to see this weekend, especially on the road going against Oklahoma's defense on Saturday. So a fun matchup, though. Fun matchup and a great story with Chambliss. If you're not familiar, look into it. It's crazy. Players to watch for this weekend. Where do you kind of go here? I guess I'm starting it. I'll kick it off with one that, we touched on him a little bit on the Monday show, and, maybe not giving quite enough attention to. Kendall Daniels is playing some awesome football. I'm going to go with Kendall Daniels. Just kind of, I don't know if under the radar, that might be overstating, but he's balling. He's balling. He was so good in Columbia. And, he's just one of those guys we talked about in the offseason that can take this defense to another level, and he's doing it right now. The last couple of weeks especially. Like, he was good earlier in the year. I think in the Michigan game where obviously it's the huge hit. Like, he's had moments all year, but it feels like the last couple of weeks that comfort is really getting high. And you mix in with Reggie Powers, what he's doing, like that duo is playing at a very high level. That's why Brent Venables said this week that this is the best cheetah group he's had at OU so far. And it's impossible to argue. Completely agree that these two guys are playing great football. So Kendall Daniels, looking forward to seeing him make some more moments. I think against Chambliss and this offense, he's just one of those guys with his ability to cover space. Like, he feels like a big guy who's going to have a big role on Saturday. So Kendall Daniels for me, a big player to watch.
Yeah, and I know you touched on this in your key, but I'm going to go with Torrey Blaylock.
Sure.
This one, coming off his second 100-yard game of the season, reigning SEC Freshman of the Week. Obviously they had a lot more success running the ball last week. Him and Xavier Robinson both averaged 5.3 yards per carry against South Carolina's defense, and like we've mentioned, Ole Miss's run defense is not even as good as South Carolina's has been. They're 99th in the nation in yards allowed per game at basically 167 per game. They're even worse on a per carry basis, tied for 112th. Teams are averaging 4.7 yards per carry against them. So I think it's a real opportunity, especially if the weather is going to be pretty crummy on Saturday, for Torrey Blaylock to really get going. He had a career high 19 rushing attempts last week. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the type of game where he gets to that 20 carry mark. Really curious to see kind of how they use him and Xavier Robinson going into this one, because that duo certainly was able to generate some good success and feed off of each other last week. So I'm looking at the freshman this time around. Ben Arbuckle talked about it this week, just kind of the moments that they kind of realized that Torrey Blaylock could be a stud early in the spring, which says a lot about him, because I think when all of us coming into the season, we thought that he was number 5 running back, probably a guy that was going to redshirt this year. And now he's started 4 straight games, and he's the clear number 1 in that room. I think he's got, two more snaps played combined than the rest of those 4 guys that we all thought were in front of him. Mm-hmm. So, big spot for him in a, potentially inclement weather game.
Yeah, no, I mentioned the corners. I want to go to the safety, though. I want to see what Peyton Bowen is going to do in this game. As Tom said, you got to limit those explosive plays. That's going to come a lot to those safeties with RSJ on the backside as well. But I think Peyton Bowen is the one that could really make a difference. Maybe getting an interception here, doing something like that, making a big play, and just stopping Ole Miss's down the field attack, which is what's been working for them all season. So I think that's a guy to watch. I mean, he needs to get that moment. He needs to have that moment to shine. He did a little bit against Texas where he had that stop in the end zone. Can he do something like that again against Ole Miss in this big matchup for Oklahoma?
Yeah, Peyton Bowen, another guy playing really good football right now. Good to see him healthy, playing well, kind of starting to come into that 5-star designation he got out of high school. One bonus one for me, and it's kind of almost a bonus key a little bit too. The kickers, Tate Sindel and Grayson Moore, both
good.
Weather maybe a factor. Feels like field position and points could be important. Both guys, just might be needed, especially Sandell. I mean, it feels like you're going to need to capitalize on points when the opportunities are there against this Ole Miss team. And so if it is kind of sloppy, like what does that do for you? So kicking game going to be interesting to watch for both teams on Saturday, I think a little bit too. So should we pick it? Final score predictions, Oklahoma and Ole Miss. I talked about with Colin on the Thursday pod. He took the Sooners 30-27, by the way.
He thinks it's going to be perfect weather all day, huh?
He's in on a high-scoring affair. Kind of surprising that Oklahoma is not a favorite, but has healthy of a favorite as they are 5.5 right now, which is that's pretty top 10 team coming into town. I mean, I think Oklahoma should be favored to win the game, but that's obviously a pretty healthy number for you guys. What do you think, Tom? You can start it. Huge spot we talked about at the beginning is set up the rest of the way if you can find a way to win it, but do they? How does this thing shake out?
Yeah, I think, with the weather factoring, I would be surprised if this was a high-scoring game as Colin predicted. And I think, like I said, I think a lower-scoring game favors Oklahoma just because of how stout the defense has been at all three levels so far this season. So I think ultimately the defense is going to be the difference in this one. And I think, Oklahoma's going to take this one. I think I had 24-21. I wouldn't be surprised if it's if the weather is worse. I would not be surprised if this was a game played in the teens. Yeah, but we'll see how it plays out. But I got them in at 24-21.
Mm-hmm. I'm close to it. I got 23-17. I think the field goals, as Josh was talking about, is going to become a really big factor in this one. And I think the defense overall for Oklahoma is going to be something different than what Ole Miss and Chambliss has seen this season. I think that's going to play a major part in this. I mean, it's all going to come down to that. So I like Oklahoma in this game. I think they're going to win this game. And I think, Tate Sandell is going to do really good things for them down the stretch and help them, get this big lead and win it. Well, not big league, but, a couple of points here and there and win it. So I like that.
Yeah, I'm right with you guys as well. Right in that same ballpark, just a tick off of Tom. I have 23-20 was what I had in my brain. Some field goal is going to be key. I think Tate Sandell is going to be a big one, a big factor in this game. As a guy who's on the field during these games, I'm choosing to believe that the rain won't be that bad. That's kind of how I've let my mind think of it this weekend. But like Tom, I mean, if it does wind up being just dumping rain and it's a lot of run game, and we know OU can bottle up the run, so it could very well be kind of a lower scoring, like who knows, maybe like a 16-13 or something like that. That's not impossible. So I'm going to say Oklahoma wins. I think the defense, this is their biggest test so far, but they've just been so good. I'm going to lean that they're going to be good again. And I think that they found something with the run game, at least enough that will work this weekend. Because, again, Ole Miss is not, they gave up 220 or whatever it was to Georgia. Like that's a spot that they can be had a little bit. So I think Oklahoma will run the ball okay. It'll be kind of similar to South Carolina, pretty conservative in the pass game. Defense is good enough, and they kind of, find a way to battle one out, and Tate Sandell hits a field goal late to kind of put them ahead, and they win. So that's what I'll say. Oklahoma gets it done 23-20. Should be a fun game, though. Looking forward to it on Saturday. Any final thoughts on anything we didn't cover? I think we covered everything.
Is the equipment manager matchup a thing at all with this, with getting the towel?
Equipment manager? Will have the right gloves?
Yeah, getting the right gloves, getting the right cleats out there.
Getting the right cleat length and that and on the grass right there, that might be a little shaky. But
I'm thinking that those Ole Miss white uniforms, with the way that they can get after the pass, we might have some good, like Trinidad Chambliss's jersey being very dirty, like pictures at the end of the game, if all goes to plan for Oklahoma. So we'll see. It should be fun. Looking forward to getting over there on Saturday back at the stadium. Oklahoma hosting Ole Miss. Full coverage over on the website, oklahoma.247sports.com, leading all up into this game. Obviously, full game day coverage from Norman, from the three of us. And then after the game on the YouTube channel, you can hear from Brent Venables, Ben Arbuckle, John Mateer, the rest of the team. Instant reaction from us as well. And obviously, full coverage all throughout the weekend as we flip the page into Tennessee starting next week over on oklahoma.247sports.com. That's it for now. For Tom Green, James D. Jackson, I'm Josh Callaway. We'll see you Saturday from Norman, Oklahoma, hosting Ole Miss in a huge top 15 showdown at the stadium.
It's a big one.